When the national media talks about the upside for Auburn's season in 2024, do not listen to them.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're dapping it up on this wonderful Friday with the Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend. There's a line that has been announced on Auburn's schedule that we don't agree with. We don't think it makes sense. We'll also touch on Auburn basketball's portal madness. Things are all over the place there. But Darrell, let's start things off talking about the ceiling for Auburn's schedule in 2024. Connor O'Gara of Saturday Down South. I like Connor O'Gara. The few times I've talked to him, very friendly, and I like a lot of his writing. Earlier this week, he put out an article and detailed the ceiling. The best case scenario, that's what the ceiling is to me, best case scenario for each SEC team. And he had Auburn at an 8-4 ceiling, Darrell. And I just have a hard time believing that that's the best case scenario for Auburn. Not most likely, but best case scenario. To me, that's what a ceiling is. And that's wrong. Auburn's ceiling is way higher than 8-4 in my mind.
I agree. I think most likely for me would be 8-4. I mean, if I was to go floor, what I think's going to happen most likely, and then ceiling, I would say 7-5 is the floor, not even 6-6. I think Auburn wins.
A floor?
The floor is 7-5.
Worst case scenario is 7-5.
Yes,
no
they
way.
are going to win one
way.
More game than last year. And if they don't, there's a big problem. I mean, just with the upgrade of their roster, they should be able to do that. So 7-5 is the floor. 8-4 is what I feel like they will do in the regular season. 9-3 is the ceiling. If they win a game they're not supposed to win and something happens where they catch somebody napping. Now, after that, we can, you can talk about winning a bowl game and going 9-4, but regular season only, that is how I see it playing out.
Maybe I have different opinions and definitions from what floor and ceiling are. I mean, for floor, you think absolute worst case scenario. And I think there is a way Auburn doesn't win 7 games. It would involve a lot of unfortunate things, but there's a way that can happen. So to me, floor is 5-7, 6-6. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But I think when you list what a floor and a ceiling is for any team, in this case, we're talking about Auburn, odds are you're not going to hit the floor, and odds are you're not going to hit the ceiling. To me, I think the ceiling's 10-2, just because I think you can make the argument of every game on Auburn's schedule to me seems extremely winnable, except for Georgia and Alabama. And we don't know what's going to happen with Alabama if they totally fall apart and, they get their version of Brian Harsin and, the worst case scenario, the floor happens for Alabama, then of course you've got a shot there. But to me, the ceiling for Auburn, to me, is 10-2, 11-1. Just not predicting it to happen. That's not what I'm doing here. But the ceiling, you're telling me, Connor O'Gara, the best thing that could happen to Auburn this year is they win 8 games. And I'm just not buying that. I'm just not buying that at all.
I think in this rare occasion, the floor and the ceiling are uniquely close when typically they aren't. And this
that
is
would
what
be
I mean.
Unique. Sure.
When you say, gosh, all these things could happen and Auburn could not even win 7 games. Yeah, but the same argument can be made. Let's go deeper then. Let's go worse. A lot of things could happen and Auburn can only win 4 games. That's not likely. Or 5 games. That's not likely. So I think that when you look at what happened last year and you're looking at trends, you say Auburn won 6 games, lost a couple of games they should have won, had an inferior roster to what they have now. No way they should win less than 7 games. No way should they match what they did last year. Yeah, they go to Georgia and Alabama, but I still think we all agree the overall schedule's easier. Yeah. Right. Agreed. Schedule's easier, roster's better, second-year coach, second year in the system for a quarterback that should only see improvement. I don't see how you don't think the floor is at least a +1. Now, I'm not going crazy and say the floor is 8. that you could pick up too. We talk about some of the guys that Auburn got in the portal that I think are worth an extra win.
Oh, I'm with you, but I don't think what Auburn did last year was their floor either. I don't think it was anywhere close to their ceiling. And some people are saying, yeah, but the San Jose State loss was pretty bad. Sure, but they could have, not gotten it together against Arkansas on the road. I think there's a scenario where that could have potentially happened. And then, we're excited and we're kind of holding on to some of these moral victories against Georgia and Alabama, and Ole Miss was kind of close at the end if you look at the scoreboard. And it's like, okay, well, they were in these games. Like, I don't think that was the floor last year. So I think comparing what actually happened last year to what the floor is this year, I don't know if that's really an argument. I agree with you on everything you've said. I think there's a disconnect in what we're defining as the floor. That's not really what I wanted to poke on today.
Yeah,
I really wanted to poke on the ceiling of what everything can do when this team comes together. The best case scenario, we've talked about this before, the path to 10 wins ceiling would look like Cam Coleman being what we all think he can be, Peyton Thorne really benefiting from better receivers, better offensive line, better scheme, and Hugh Freeze, taking a better control of the offense. And you just look at these games where you feel like there's no way Auburn can lose. Alabama, A&M, Cal, New Mexico, Arkansas. You with me on those four? I assume we agree.
Yeah.
And then Vanderbilt and ULM. And it's like, you're really not that far away at that point. So to me, just saying that the ceiling, the best case scenario for Auburn is 8-4. You either don't know what a ceiling means or you just really don't believe and what Auburn's doing. And it sounds like he doesn't believe in Peyton Thorne, which is fine because he says a pair of new coordinators and a not new quarterback is why the Tigers don't have 9-3 upside.
Well, he throws some. First of all, let me tell you why. I know we're not focusing on the floor. The reason why I brought the floor up and why it was relative to this conversation is because it's uniquely close to the ceiling, which is rare that happens. So that's the only reason why I felt like it was it's something that needed to be addressed.
Yeah, sure.
I think the other thing that why he is so maybe thinking that 8 is the ceiling is if you go back to what he says about what Auburn's record is against Power 5 opponents since 2021. I think it was ranked. I mean, Auburn's has a pretty putrid record against ranked Power 5 opponents.
Yeah, Darrell, let me just read it since we're quoting him. He says, since Auburn's winning on October 30th of 2021 against Ole Miss, since then Auburn is 0-17 versus Power 5 teams that finish with a winning record. To me, I don't think that matters. I think that says more about the last, 2 years, 3 years of Auburn football, which Hugh Freeze really wasn't a part of much of that. And we also talked about how we just absolutely flipped the roster. I mean, how many guys were on that roster when they beat Ole Miss? Not many, maybe a few of the super seniors, but just not a whole lot. So I don't know if that's relevant. I mean, that's a previous era of Auburn football, and whether you agree with it or not, it even seemed like there were moments last year where this coaching staff was more concerned with this upcoming year than even last year while they were coaching there. You can critique that whatever you want, but I think we all kind of agree that that's what was happening. So I don't know if that stat's relevant. I genuinely don't.
Yeah, it's not relevant for the sake that different coaching staff, like you said, different roster. Do you consider trends when you try to predict ceilings? I don't know. I mean, do you consider experience and what the quarterback coming back does? I think that the biggest component for me, the biggest X factor is what you mentioned with just take the games that you think are no-brainers that Auburn should win. And I think you went through and there was 5 of them, right? There were 5 no-brainers.
Well, we count the first 4, so through Arkansas, and then we say ULM and Vandy.
So 6. So all Auburn has to do is win 2 more games to reach that. No, I mean, that's
ceiling?
Why a ceiling's higher than that. Yeah, I think I think the ceiling is 9. I don't know about 10 in the regular season because that means you win every single game but Auburn and Georgia. I mean, but Alabama and Georgia. And I don't know if that's feasible. Even as a ceiling, even as a pie in the sky scenario, which a ceiling's supposed to be, it's supposed to be the best case scenario. Right. I still think it needs to be realistic too, though. I mean, I think ceiling and realistic can go hand in hand. And realistically, Auburn's ceiling should be 9 wins.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think the true definition of a ceiling to me is like best case scenario. And I do think there is a best case scenario where the stars align perfectly and, Auburn does win 10. I'm not predicting that to happen. I think Auburn's going to win 7 or 8 games next year, but to say the ceiling, the best case scenario is 8, I'm not buying it. Doesn't sound like you are either. So,
I'm not. Nope.
And Connor O'Gara of Saturday Down South, I really like his work. I just disagreed with him there. And what do you think Auburn's ceiling is? Drop it in the comments down below, or if you're listening on audio, reach out to us via the Locked On Auburn Discord or on social media. Would love to hear folks' thoughts on that. Speaking of some of these toss-up games that Auburn needs to win to achieve that ceiling, or even 8-4, according to O'Gara. There's one line that you and I aren't crazy about, and I don't think it makes a ton of sense. We'll discuss that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the best way to buy tickets for any sporting event, any concert, the theater, comedy. Darrell, you've used Game Time multiple times. It is your go-to source whenever you need to buy tickets for an event.
Used them for concerts and ball games, and used them for baseball games, both spring training and regular season at different places. Concerts, some old 80s music concerts. It was right there. Gave me a great seat of a great view of my seat. So I love Game Time. Very convenient on my phone as an app, and it's just basically everything you need at your fingertips.
Yeah, I was Googling tour dates for an artist that my wife and I were interested in going to see, and the default on their website took us to another place. And we looked to see what tickets looked like. I'm like, just for kicks, I'm going to pull up Game Time here just to see what the difference is. It was like a $20 difference in the same section. So it's certainly worth the 2 seconds that it's going to take to download the free app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Darrell, when you look at some of the lines that have dropped for Auburn, and there's about 5 or so that you can find out there, just way too early lines. Auburn and Oklahoma. So that'll be Auburn's 5th game of the season. They are a 3-point dog at home against the Oklahoma Sooners. And we all agree that this is one of, if not the most important game on Auburn's schedule. It's certainly top 3. We won't debate that today. We probably will later in the offseason. But Auburn being a 3-point dog at home, I'm curious to see if this moves at all. I mean, Oklahoma is a team that's replacing a ton on offense, including quarterback, including offensive line. And also, I think all the pressure is on Oklahoma and Texas, but Auburn doesn't play Texas this first year to prove, hey, we belong. We're not just the team that can dominate the Big 12. We belong in the SEC. I think the timing of this certainly matters. Oklahoma hosts Tennessee. That would be their first SEC game ever when they host Tennessee and Norman the week prior. I think it's going to be super emotional one way or the other. It's either going to be euphoric for Oklahoma or it's going to be devastating because they're going to be the butt of every joke in the SEC. Regardless, that's going to be an emotional one, and that's going to take a toll. And then what do? They go on the road to take on an Auburn team that's probably going to be 4-0. And I just think that's going to be a rowdy Jordan-Hare Stadium. Auburn fans have been waiting for Oklahoma and Texas to enter the SEC for a long time as well, Darrell. I'm not counting Auburn out of this game when they host Oklahoma, despite Vegas making Oklahoma a 3-point favorite.
Yeah, I mean, what that tells you on simplistic terms is that they feel like Oklahoma's probably a touchdown better than Auburn as a football team going into this year based upon what they have coming back and what Auburn has coming back. Sure. I think that's overzealous. I think that's a reach. I think that just like there's particular websites that really disrespected Auburn and put out graphics that said, man, does Oklahoma ever have it tough? Look at these 4 games they have to play, and completely left Auburn out of that graphic. And I'm thinking, if you think Jordan-Hare is a walk in the park or a picnic, regardless of what their record is, ask Alabama last year, who needed a 4th and 31 and went into the college football playoff to beat Auburn. It ain't easy. And they're going to find out the hard way that to be dismissive of Auburn on that graphic or to think that that's not going to be difficult. I think Auburn being a 3-point underdog at home to a team that wasn't world beaters last year and this year doesn't look like they're a playoff contender is telling me that they are overvaluing Oklahoma. And I just think that line, I wouldn't be, upset, not upset. I'm not upset either way. I wouldn't be, so much thinking that that's off if it was a pick 'em or if Auburn was only a 1-point favorite, but you have got to consider what kind of home field Jordan-Hare is. And if you don't know that, Brett Venables in Vegas needs to ask Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, because they both have publicly said it's a whole different deal going there.
Yeah, it's a wild situation. I just kind of have the feeling that Auburn and Oklahoma, like that just has the makings for something weird to happen as well. And it's in Jordan-Hare Stadium. This is Oklahoma's schedule before they play Auburn. And obviously I think their SEC schedule is pretty tough, but this is their schedule before they play Auburn. They host Temple, whatever. They host Houston. And I think that's tricky. I think it's tricky. Not great, but Houston's going to want to beat Oklahoma more than Oklahoma's going to want to beat Houston. Just worth noting. They host Tulane, not a walk in the park. They lose a lot, but still not a walk in the park. And then they host Tennessee. So all their games will be at home before they travel to take on Auburn. I don't know, man. I think Oklahoma's in for a rude awakening. Is Auburn going to be part of that? I can't guarantee you that, but I think Auburn is going to be, it's either going to be a pick 'em or I think Auburn will be slightly favored by the time this game kicks off.
Oh yeah. Cause you think about what could happen. I mean, if Oklahoma comes into that game 3-1 and Auburn's 4-0, then that whole narrative changes and Auburn becomes, I think, the favorite by at least a field goal. They're basing that upon where it is right now before any games get played out. And if the scenario plays out like we've just talked about,
yeah.
And I suspect that, Oklahoma could drop that game to Tennessee, although it is in Norman. And Auburn's 4-0, then it becomes definitely a game where I think Auburn should be favored.
This is also, let me make sure I'm correct in saying this. Yeah, this is also going to be Auburn fans' last chance because of the way the schedule is made. They don't play a home game in October. And so when they host Oklahoma on September 28th, they don't get a chance to cheer for Auburn at home again until November 2nd when Vandy comes back, because they go to Georgia, bye week, to Missouri, to Kentucky, and then, they come back home to Vandy. So I think that's an aspect of it too, that's going to be a rowdy Jordan-Hare Stadium. That's all I'm saying.
It is. And, there's so many different factors. Is this going to be a night game? Is this going to be a game where, Auburn everything's rolling offensively?
Yeah.
Peyton Thorne is confident as can be because Auburn's 4-0 and he carries that into the Oklahoma game. So many factors we don't know that are X factors right now. Sure. I'm just saying, even right now, without them playing a down of football, you're not going to convince me, whether it's Vegas, Atlantic City, or Biloxi, that Auburn is a 7 points less than Oklahoma, or Oklahoma is 7 points better than Auburn. And that's what they're basically saying.
Just to be clear, you keep saying 7 points because of where the game is played.
Exactly.
Home field's worth about 3 points.
Home field's worth about 3 points. So that's why I'm saying that.
Got it. Just want to make sure everybody knows.
If it was a pick 'em, then they're saying that Oklahoma's about 2 or 3 points better. And I can live with that a little bit more.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you on that. All right. Auburn basketball's action or lack thereof in the transfer portal, certainly worth talking about. We jump into that next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. We all love Monopoly Go. Our competitive side loves Monopoly Go. You can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. And the more you win together, the more things you unlock. Darrell, your favorite thing about Monopoly Go is what, my friend?
Well, I think you think about how families for years gathered around the Monopoly board.
Oh, yeah.
And now families are so mobile and portable. You can still do that.
Yes.
Gather around a virtual Monopoly board and play with your friends and family.
No question about it. So Monopoly Go, there's a bunch of things you can unlock. It feels different. They're adding new stuff and changing things up every day. So there's a ton of uniqueness every time you play it, which is fun. There's always new timed events to help you can win big prizes. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it for free in the Google Play or your phone's app store. Monopoly Go, game on. Darrell, when you look at the transfer portal for basketball, most teams are in a similar situation. Most teams need 1 or 2 more scholarship players. Auburn needs about 2 more guys, and we all assume it'll be a big man around the basket, and we also assume one will be a backup point guard in some capacity. From an optics standpoint, it seems like it's very easy to lazily paint a narrative that Auburn keeps whiffing on guys in the transfer portal. And you say, no, that's not the story at all.
No, I think that this wringing of hands and this Chicken Little mentality that a lot of people that are on Auburn Twitter and on message boards and on things that just, I've said it 1,000 times. I wish people could find a happy medium and realize that 2 things could be true at the same time. I'm about to tell you some things that are common knowledge and maybe not so common knowledge to kind of explain where Auburn's are. Is it concerning or disappointing that Auburn went 0 for 4 on their 4 portal targets? Yes, it is. That could be true. Is it a case of Auburn's getting out recruited? Auburn doesn't have any NIL money. Bruce Pearl's not getting it done. Yada, yada, yada. This narrative that all the negative. Absolutely not. Okay. So if you were chasing starters, Zach, in the portal right now, if you were chasing guys that you consider to be key components that you absolutely had to have, necessities, not luxuries, and you were whiffing, then there's a reason to be concerned. You are trying to procure a backup point guard and a combo 4-5 that may or may not start, depending on where Broom slides, how Chaney Johnson developed. So let's talk about the 4 guys. You had Duke Miles, who everybody thought might come to Auburn because of proximity and where he's from. We know that Oklahoma said you can start here and threw a giant NIL bag at him that Auburn could have chose to match, but chose not to. There's a difference between can't and won't, and people need to understand that. Get it through your heads.
Well,
choosing not to is not that you can't.
Right. And Oklahoma was paying him to be a starter. It'd be silly to pay starting money to somebody who might play 10 to 15 minutes a game, depending on what they do with Big East.
Especially when you still need a 4 or 5, right? You still have one more spot to fill. All right. Then you've got the Godfrey kid that same scenario, averaged 6 points a game at Clemson, can start at Georgia. His dad played at Georgia. It's a legacy thing. Those circumstances make sense.
Yeah.
All right,
also, anecdotally, I think he was the transfer portal target that got me the least excited out of everybody you're about to list.
Me too, because of the stats and just he was coming off the bench. So the Ivy Curry kid that we talked about, I was pretty excited about because he was already used to coming off the bench. But here's how that went down. Central Florida said it's not that Ivy Curry was upset or wouldn't come off the bench for Auburn, but he played 27 minutes a game at Texas San Antonio. You can come off the bench and still play 25 minutes. You ain't playing 25 minutes at Auburn. You're not. But you can go to Central Florida and play 30. So all that was happening. He was waffling on his visit, and Auburn basically just said, don't come. You're waffling. We cannot guarantee you to play more than 20 minutes. So just, good luck to you. Don't come. And I was pronouncing it wrong, and so now I got it corrected. It's Achor from Samford. Justin Hokanson has reported this. I've reached out to a couple people privately just to get confirmation, and there is some admission issues. I don't know if it's academic or if it's major related.
Yeah, credits transferring or whatever. Sure.
Whatever. I don't know if it's credits, if it's major, whatever, but there is that bugaboo again of academics or admissions getting you in. So how is that Auburn's fault? I mean, how is that a whiff when the kid would probably come here, but you can't because of it's ludicrous. Here's the deal.
If he has a sports management degree, I'm going to lose it.
I will too. You don't need to go out and get. Now, there's this kid, Dior Johnson, that played at Pitt. That's a really good player that has had a bad checkered past with some things that happened. Who's at Pitt and is a walking bucket. But my point is this: you don't need, if you're Auburn, you don't have to go out and get somebody that should start at 90% of the other schools out there. Go get somebody that can play 10 to 15 minutes a game, is very efficient, takes care of the basketball. and does what you need to do when they come off the bench to give JP Pegues a blow. You don't need somebody that you're counting on to go for 15 points a night. Just get somebody that can play 10 to 12 minutes. You don't go out and get Pegues, Zach, to play 15 minutes. You go out to get him to play 25 or 30. That's the plan for a guy like JP Pegues, who is a really good basketball player. So all you need is somebody to play 10 minutes a game and be efficient and take care of the basketball. Now, the 4-5 combo, whatever that is, that may be a little bit of a higher echelon player to compete with Chaney Johnson. The money is there. Quit saying people that it's not. Again, I'm going to put it on my tombstone. Just because you don't doesn't mean you can't. And that's the issue that's going on right now. And people are like, oh my gosh, we lost out on another backup. Listen, bottom line is, if Pegues wasn't at Auburn already, they would have gotten Miles or Curry in a heartbeat because they could have provided the minutes and the corresponding NIL. But understand this, and this has been verified. The Curry situation was not NIL. It was purely minutes and playing time.
And that goes back to what I preface a lot of portal talk with, is you never fully know why somebody's in the portal and what they want to get out of it. Sometimes it's NIL, sometimes it's playing time, sometimes it's academic, sometimes they want to be closer to home. I mean, there's a million different reasons as to why. And props to this coaching staff for kind of making sure and doing due diligence to figure out what the best fit is and the best value is. And I think they're going to. So,
and I would say this real quick, people that want to say, well, Auburn's not really serious about winning, they keep whiffing on these guys. Look, you have right now, I would be worried if Auburn didn't have Pegues, Denver Jones, Chad Baker-Mazara, Janai Broome, Chaney Johnson, Dylan Cardwell, and the Pettiford and Howard kids who are high-ranking recruits coming in.
Right.
If you just rolled them out there and went with 8 or 9 dudes, which people were complaining last year that you don't need to play 11 or 12. I've gotten so caught up in this narrative that Bruce Pearl has got so much depth and we can beat people's eyes out because we play 11 or 12. I don't know, dude. Playing 9 studs and shortening the bench might be the way to go if you got the right 9.
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you on that. I don't think you need a true 2 deep at every spot. Nobody else has that. Now, it is nice when you have it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's worth, giving up other things. So, great. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on X, DAP6410, variety of call-in shows during the week on the Auburn Network, and then with you on Wednesdays and Fridays.
Yes, please like the video, please subscribe, and we'll be back on Monday. This has been Locked On Auburn.